Hungary, 1876. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the streets of Nagyrev, mixing with the scent of river water and wood smoke. In this small farming village, women gather around wells to trade gossip while their husbands work the fields. Nobody notices the short, round woman with gray hair watching from her doorway. Nobody suspects that Susanna Fazekas is keeping careful count of every unhappy wife who passes by. This actually happened. One woman would help hundreds of wives murder their husbands, and the method was so simple it's terrifying. When you discover how long this went on before anyone caught her, you'll realize this was just the beginning of one of history's most calculated serial killing operations, disguised as neighborly advice. Zuzana runs the village midwife business. She delivers babies. She makes herbal medicines. She listens to women cry about their problems. In small farming villages, the midwife knows everyone's secrets, every affair, every beating, every desperate wish spoken in whispers. This knowledge is currency. This knowledge is power. Now watch what happens when knowledge meets opportunity. The Great War ends in 1918. Soldiers return home to Nagyrev. But these men aren't the same boys who left. They've seen trenches, they've killed, they drink too much, they hit too hard. The village women gather at Zuzana's door more often now. They whisper about husbands who came back different, husbands who hurt them, husbands they wish would just disappear. Zuzana listens. She nods. She makes tea while women cry at her kitchen table. The steam rises between them, like secrets taking shape in the air. Then she leans close and asks the question that changes everything. Would you like me to help? There is something deeply unsettling about how easily ordinary people can become monsters when given permission. We are the only species that can transform mercy into murder through simple conversation. In that moment, across hundreds of kitchen tables, Zuzana wasn't offering poison, she was offering freedom. The terrible mathematics of that choice would echo through the village for decades. The poison is arsenic, simple, effective, impossible to detect in 1918. Zuzana boils flypaper in water. The arsenic leaches out into a clear liquid that tastes like nothing. A few drops in soup. A little more in coffee. Within days, the husband gets sick. Within weeks, he's dead. The doctor writes it down as natural causes, because old farming men die all the time. The first murder happens quietly. A wife named Maria comes to Zuzana's door on a cold morning in 1919. Her husband beats her. Everyone knows. Nobody helps. Zuzana hands her a small bottle, tells her exactly how much to use. 2 weeks later, Maria is a widow. Nobody questions it. The man was old. He drank. These things happen. But Maria talks. Not loudly, just whispers to her sister. Her sister whispers to a friend. That friend has her own problems at home. Soon there's a line of women at Zuzana's door. They don't come for medicine anymore. They come for solutions. The bottles multiply. 1 becomes 5. 5 becomes 20. 20 becomes so many that Zuzana needs help keeping track. She recruits another woman, Susanna Ola, to help with production. 2 women, hundreds of bottles, an entire village learning to solve their problems with poison. Here's where it gets darker. The husbands aren't the only victims anymore. Sick parents who won't die fast enough, brothers who inherit too much land, neighbors who know too much. The poison spreads like a disease through Nagyrev, except this disease has a cure and nobody wants it. Walk through the village in 1921. The air smells like death disguised as dinner. At least 3 funerals happen every month. The graveyard fills with men who died suddenly, peacefully, in their sleep. The priest gives the same sermon over and over. The same women cry the same tears. But if you watch closely, you see relief in those tears. You see freedom. There is something sacred about the precision of their deception. Bowl by bowl, spoonful by spoonful, they constructed a system of murder so perfect that nobody suspected for years. In its way, this was the most organized thing the village ever accomplished. The doctor never catches on. Why would he? Old men die, farm work is hard, hearts give out, livers fail. He signs death certificate after death certificate, never once checking for poison, never once wondering why so many healthy men suddenly drop dead in the same small village. But someone finally notices. 1929, a young man dies, too young, too sudden. His cousin doesn't believe the official story. He goes to the police in the nearest city, demands an autopsy. The doctors dig up the body, run tests, and find enough arsenic to kill 5 men. They dig up another body. More arsenic. Another body. Same result. The police return to Nagirov with shovels. They exhume grave after grave. The cemetery becomes an excavation site. Body after body. All poisoned. All murdered. All buried with nobody asking questions. Between the years 1914 and 1929, at least 300 people died in Nagirov. The evidence suggests half of them were murdered. Some historians put the number closer to 400. In a village of barely 700 people, that's genocide hiding in plain sight. The arrests begin in July 1929. Police round up over 40 women, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, an entire network of poisoners, all learning from Zuzana, all sharing her bottles, all keeping each other's secrets. The trials become a sensation. Newspapers across Europe cover the story. They call them the angel makers of Nagirov. Reporters flood the village. They interview survivors. They photograph the cemetery. They try to understand how this happened, how an entire community became complicit in mass murder. 8 women receive death sentences. 12 get life in prison. Dozens more get shorter terms. But Zuzana Fazekas, the woman who started it all, never faces trial. The police come for her on a December morning. They knock on her door. She knows why they're there. She invites them inside, asks them to wait, and drinks her own poison in the next room. They find her dead on the kitchen floor, the same floor where hundreds of women sat and planned murders over tea. There is something deeply unsettling about her final choice. She who had helped so many escape their lives chose the same escape for herself. In the silence of that kitchen, surrounded by empty bottles and years of secrets, Zuzana faced the same mathematics she had offered others. The poison that freed so many women finally freed her too. But here's what haunts historians. How did nobody notice for 15 years? How did hundreds of deaths go unquestioned? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about human nature. People see what they want to see. Doctors signed certificates because investigating meant work. Neighbors stayed quiet because speaking up meant becoming targets. The whole village became a conspiracy, not through planning, but through willful blindness. We are the only species that can transform community into accomplice. In Nagirov, the bonds that should have protected people became the chains that enabled murder. Every funeral that went unquestioned, every grave that went unexamined, every widow who remarried too quickly, all of it normalized until mass murder became just another part of village life. The trial transcripts make for difficult reading. Women describe their husbands' deaths with clinical precision. The soup that made him sick, the coffee that finished the job, the funeral where everyone pretended to grieve. No remorse, no guilt, just relief that their suffering finally ended. One woman told the court her husband beat her so badly she couldn't walk for weeks. Another described watching her children starve while her husband drank away their money. These weren't excuses, they were explanations. The court had to decide if desperation justified murder. Most said no. The hangings happened quickly. The newspapers reported each execution in detail, but public opinion remained divided. Some saw them as murderers who deserved death. Others saw them as victims who fought back the only way they could. The village of Nagirov never recovered. Young people left. The population dropped. the cemetery stood as a permanent reminder of what happened. Today, fewer than 400 people live there. The wells where women once gathered are gone. Zuzana's house was torn down decades ago. But the story refuses to die. Every few years, someone writes another book, makes another documentary, asks the same questions. Were they victims or villains? Heroes or monsters? The truth is more complex than most people think. They were women with no options who found a terrible solution. They were neighbors who protected each other until protection became conspiracy. They were human beings who discovered that the line between mercy and murder, between justice and revenge, between desperation and evil, is thinner than any of us want to believe. In the terrible poetry of Nagirev, we see ourselves reflected, not in the poison, but in the silence. Every person who suspected but said nothing. Every doctor who didn't look too closely. Every neighbor who chose comfort over truth. The angel makers couldn't have killed hundreds without a village full of people choosing blindness. That's the real horror of this story. Not that one woman handed out poison, but that an entire community decided that was acceptable. The bottles Zuzana filled were just tools. The real weapon was collective denial. The agreement to pretend that everything was normal while bodies piled up in the cemetery. Nagirev stands as a monument to what happens when we stop asking questions, when we accept easy explanations, when we choose not to see what's happening right in front of us. 300 people died because nobody wanted to admit what everyone knew. The last angel maker died in prison in 1962. She never spoke about what happened, never gave interviews, never explained herself. She took her secrets to the grave, just like Zuzana, just like all the men they killed. But the graves remember. The cemetery in Nagirev holds the evidence. Hundreds of bodies, all poisoned, all buried under headstones that lie about how they died. Natural causes, peaceful deaths, lies carved in stone. This actually happened in a small village in Hungary. For 15 years, hundreds died, and nobody noticed because no